Everyone who can hear John Chatterton, please wave to him. You heard him? Good.
Hey guys, how you doing? Oh my goodness. Well, how's everybody doing for the lockdown? Good?
They're not going to be able to talk back to you. They can chat. If you guys have questions, just type them into the chat thing, and during gaps in the conversation or when John's wrapped up, we will go to the questions, okay? Let me start by asking John Chatterton what the heck he is doing while we're all locked down, when we're all outdoors people.
Well, you know, to tell you the truth, I have absolutely positively no shortage of stuff to do. And you know, I've got dive gear that I'm working on. I've got class schedules and class lesson plans that I'm working on, and I'm trying to fix all the stuff that I broke during the past dive year. So, and on top of that, I'm trying to fix all the stuff in my backyard and my house and all that. So I feel like I'm this is almost like vacation, but every single day I don't get done as much as I would have liked to.
Really? The thing that prompted me to reach out to you and ask you to speak to us was your classes. We have some people up in the area, including myself, who are interested in getting started in technical diving. That's what you're doing now for classes? Is that what you're working on?
Yeah, well, you know, in traditionally pre COVID-19 lockdown, I would do classes in the spring and the fall. And in the winter time, I would try and do planning and preparation, that kind of stuff. And in the summertime, I would work on a variety of projects. I'd end up, you know, doing TV projects or salvage projects. Or last year, I was on the Andrea Doria again. And we also went out and tried to hit the U-boat in the Carolina and a few other things. So I got to go diving up north. This summer's going to be a little bit strange. I'm not sure what to expect. I know that in the state of New Jersey, the governor is saying he's shutting down all the dive boats for the summer already. So I don't know if that means we won't be going to the Andrea Doria. It certainly could mean that, but I'll find something else to do. I'm also, you know, I used to work in the Dominican Republic, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that. I worked on a salvage contract down there, and I would like very much to get back down there.
The Dominican Republic, that was the topic of a book, right? That was written about you and what you're looking for?
Rob Kurson, who wrote Shadow Divers, wrote a second book called Pirate Hunters, and it was about a pirate wreck that we found, and you know, it's for me, it was really interesting because of it, you know, anytime you find a wreck, it's you know, it is such a convoluted path. So and in the case of the Golden Fleece, which was Joseph Bannister's wreck or ship, it was, you know, it showed me how right I could be, and it also showed me how wrong I could be.
How so?
And well, you know, the problem with any shipwreck, if it is yet to be found, and it's worthwhile, it's got some kind of value, or there's something about it that makes it brings it into the attention of divers, historians, whatever. There's always people who know where the wreck is.
Right.
The wreck's out there, we just can't find it. And typically speaking, if you know what everybody else knows, and that's all you know, you're going to end up just like everybody else. So the thing is, you have to kind of, you have to, it's important to know what everybody else has been doing from a point of, oh, okay, that's not going to be successful. Why are they not being successful? And trying to, you know, it's like being a detective, and you're trying to figure out what fits, what doesn't fit, why is this like this. And in the case of the Golden Fleece, actually, I've even got I've got like a PowerPoint here. Hang on, let me see if I can bring this up.
Did I activate the share screen for you?
I'm going to find out here in a second.
Okay. I see one person says that they've read the second Kurson book about the DR. Anybody else read that book? No?
Okay, I think I got to hit share here. Okay, wait, I think I could just hit that. So have I somehow, some way brought, are you guys seeing
Not yet.
me, or you got?
We can see you. You click on share screen at the bottom.
Okay.
There you go. There it comes. Yep. There you go.
Okay.
There we go. Everyone
So I guess I gotta say, looking for play slideshow.
off in the
But I was, I'm sorry?
top left-hand corner says play from start and play from current slide.
Play from start. There we go.
Right?
Okay. The thing about the Dominican Republic is, for me, it was totally different from a shipwreck standpoint. You know, basically, I was a big steel guy. World War I, World War II, Lusitania, Britannic, Andrea Doria, all of that. Now, all of a sudden, you're talking about shipwrecks that are very small, comparatively speaking, and also on a so the historical research is completely different. Trying to research the colonial period as opposed to trying to research World War I or World War II, German submarines, that kind of thing. So for me, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And the concept of treasure, it's like, yes, I brought up gold and silver and sapphire and diamonds before and all that, but this is like, you know, colonial period treasure was, I mean, it was just something that I thought was incredibly exciting. So I got an opportunity to go down there, and I was working with a friend of mine, John Matera, and we were working with another salver down there, Tracy Bowden, and it was, they wanted to find a pirate ship. And the pirate ship was not necessarily something that had a whole bunch of treasure on it, but it was a very important part of the local history. So you know, I like the concept of the fact that there was, like, it was lost, like people were looking for it and they couldn't find it. So um, um for me, um you know, we were down there looking for really treasure ships, and so you know, we were running side scan sonars around. This is like a side scan sonar image, and right in the middle you can see the nadir gap. That's the area right underneath the the boat towing the magnetometer towfish. But you can see all the cannons here, and you can see a cannon there. You can see 3 cannons here and 3 cannons over here. There's a whole pile of cannons over here and over here. There's some more cannons here and here and here. And I think we ended up with 11 cannons all total, something like that. Maybe it's more than that. So we're working down there, but it was basically proposed that, like, you got to find this pirate ship. And so the way to find any wreck is, okay, what do we know? What do we know about the wreck? And we started getting into the history, and I just loved the history. There's a guy by the name of Joseph Bannister, and he's a ship captain, and he's running a merchant ship, and he is, you know, he's like a working guy. He's like a working stiff. He's running this merchant ship in the late 1600s, and he basically turns pirate. And you know, you think about this in terms of like, oh, well, you know, well, the guy had like a legit job, and it's like, you know, a lot of guys, the pirates were, you know, they didn't have much in the way of alternatives. So that they came to piracy because they were out of other options. Here's a guy who's like, you know, no, you know what, I want to be, I'm going to steal the ship that I'm running and become a pirate. And so that part was really kind of fascinating in and of itself. But then it's like, he's trying to get, he tried to get hired as a privateer, and it wasn't working. They were like, no. And anyway, it was rumored that he'd gone and was working for the French. So the Royal Navy catches him out on the water, and he's, you know, he, at this point, he's not concerned about the Royal Navy, but they bring him back to Port Royal in Jamaica, and the governor of Jamaica tries him as a pirate. And of course, the privateers were pirates, so, you know, he's kind of victim of this political shift in the dynamics of society. So he's like, okay, he goes to trial, and you know, he's tried for piracy, but he's tried for piracy in Port Royal, in which everybody in Port Royal is either A, a pirate, or B, they're in the business of supplying pirates with the things that they need. So he gets found not guilty, which drives the governor crazy. So he's found not guilty, and he literally walks right out of court. But the governor tells the Royal Navy, it's like, you know what? No, this is no good. I don't care about the trial. Go find this guy. I want to hang him. So they find him, or they're looking for him. He finds out that they're looking for him. So he basically gets his crew, steals back his ship, and in the middle of the night slips out of Port Royal and goes back to work as a pirate. He literally, if you've ever seen the movie Captain Blood with Errol Flynn, that movie storyline takes a lot of Joseph Bannister's life and uses it in the Captain Blood storyline. It's just an amazing story. So they come to the Dominican Republic. They're in Samana Bay, and you know the way it goes with pirates is speed is their most important weapon. So they want to keep the hulls clean. So that means they careen the ship, they clean the hull, get the marine growth off of it to make the ship as fast as it possibly can be. So they find a spot, and Bannister's got his crew, and he says, you know what, I want to build 2 shore batteries. Take the cannons off the deck, and we're going to put the cannons over here. We're going to put the cannons over here. We're going to have a very protected thing. This is a good place. You can only see us from. So it is an extraordinarily defensive position and brilliant tactics. So the Royal Navy comes in, and the Royal Navy. These are some of the cannons there. These weren't the cannons from the Golden Fleece, but every place we found cannons, we were always interested. This is a photo mosaic we made of I think this is the Golden Fleece, to tell you the truth. We made a photo mosaic of the site, and here you can see some of the ballast pile in the middle. And we've got some, coral growing on the sides. But anytime you see ballast stone, typically speaking, there's some hull underneath it. Now, occasionally you get ships that are turned upside down and that kind of thing.
So did you find other shipwrecks on the way to the Golden Fleece?
Well, the Golden Fleece was something that it was like a side hustle. We had all these different things going on at the same time, and one of the things we were doing was we went out to the Concepcion, in the Silver Bank. So here's a chart that was written by a guy who was diving the Concepcion in the 1970s with Bert Weber, and he's marking little tiny things. Here's all the little things that every single thing he found, he marked on the chart. And we're diving in an area where we don't have any charts. So really all we had was Duke's chart. And to get this chart, I got this chart from a friend of his, and the deal was I had to put Duke's ashes on the Concepcion. And I was like, sure, I'd be happy. And, so I picked up the chart, and the guy gives me a little tiny sandwich bag of ashes. And on the Ziploc bag on the outside is written Duke. And I'm like, well, that's not very much. I mean, poor Duke, that's all that's left of Duke. And the guy goes, well, actually, Duke wanted his ashes in a lot of places, so I had to divide it up, and this is the part that's going to Concepcion. So I took the guy's, ashes out there. We put them on the rack, and we were diving out there. We were working on all kinds of stuff. This is, you can see that's our dive boat. This is actually one crew is coming out of the water as another crew is coming in the water. And we're working with metal detectors, and we were having a blast. Here you can see the ballast stones, and sandwiched in between the ballast stones are pieces of pottery here. Now, they were using pottery in a lot of different ways. But, this is when Concepcion sank. was a time where Spain had actually moved out to the Pacific. So Spain was trading with the countries of Asia, and at the same time they're plundering the New World. And so the ships, the Manila galleons would trade between Asia, and then they'd come back to like the Isthmus of Panama. They'd unload their cargo there and prepare to go back out. So those ships never left the Pacific. And then the cargo from there would be carried across the isthmus, and it'd be loaded up onto Spanish ships that were heading back to Spain. So this particular wreck, the Concepcion, we were actually finding in the 70s when the wreck was relocated. It was salvaged. It was salvaged at the time by a guy by the name of Willem Phipps, who, not coincidentally, is thought to be involved with the treasure up in Oak Island.
He had a Maine connection too, right?
Yeah, well, he was up in Massachusetts. He became the governor, and so yeah, he had a Maine connection too. And you know, when you get down east, it's like you know, it's all the same. But he was up in the area of Nova Scotia, Maine, Massachusetts, all of that. But anyway, in the 1970s, when the wreck was rediscovered, the guys went out there and they blasted the hell out of it to get rid of the coral. Unfortunately, this destroyed the china that was on the wreck. Now, the china on the wreck was actually Ming Dynasty china, legit Ming Dynasty china. It's not the you know, it's not the crap from like Walmart or off a passenger liner. It's Ming Dynasty china. So we would find pieces of china that were essentially intact, but you couldn't recover them because they were essentially pulverized from the guy using dynamite on the reefs, which strangely enough was, you know, it was something they did in that period. Jacques Cousteau did it at the Blue Hole of Belize and a few other things. But anyway, so we were working all that stuff. Here's some coins, working the dredge, diving on open circuit, diving on full face mask. You know, this is a clump of Spanish coins. And in the same area, actually where this dredge was, we were finding these little, because we were working with metal detectors too. So we were finding small silver beads, and they were a geodesic sphere shape. And they had a hole drilled in them. And we assumed that, oh, it had been part of a bracelet or a necklace or something like that. And the dredge that I'm using here is it's a Venturi water dredge. So it sucks stuff up, and then wherever you've got the other end of the hose, it puts it into a pile. So every once in a while you got to go down the line and knock the pile over. So I'm knocking the pile over, and what's the matter, buddy? Do you want to go out? I think Charlotte has to walk the dog.
The dinosaurs came in behind you a few minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Charlie, could you walk Snoopy, please? So I'm pushing the pile over, and you know we're working, and there's all kinds of stuff, and I'm pushing the pile over, and out of nowhere I see bright red, like you know, I mean we're in about 25, 30 feet of water, but it's like bright red. And I pick it up, and it's a ruby. And it's a ruby cut in the same shape of the geodesic sphere with a hole drilled through the ruby. So it was part of the same bracelet. So we're finding the silver beads. And now, you know, I mean, there's no way to find precious stones other than actually just laying eyes on it. So, but anyway, I was, you know, we were doing fun stuff like that, but at the same time, and here we are, we're moving ballast stones. Some of this stuff we were working in hard hats. And you know, down there, the water in the summertime got as hot as like 86 degrees. Oh, and of course, this is me. I had a bright idea because, you know, when I used to work in underwater construction, I worked in New York and all that kind of stuff. This was one of the dive helmets that I had. Now, you know, these modern day helmets, this is a Kirby Morgan 37, and it's got a regulator here. So it's essentially, it's a very modern, comfortable, the helmet's attached to your head. If you turn your head, the helmet turns with your head. So, you know, I got the idea. I was like, I'm going to rehabilitate my Swindell air hat. Now, this hat is sitting on my shoulders on a ring. If I turn my head in the helmet still stays where it is. So I could look up and, you know, through the top port and that kind of thing. But the thing about air hats is they are just loud. So anyway, I took my helmet down there, rehabilitated it, and I put it on, and I was like, this is so great. This is like, you know, getting back into, you know, what I used to like, you know, an old piece of my dive gear. And I got in there and I was like, this.
Sorry, John, how much did that hat weigh? Was it heavy?
Out of the water, heavy. Actually, underwater, you can see I've got like a crotch strap with this wire cable underneath it to hold the helmet down. In the water, the helmet's positively buoyant.
Wow.
So it's probably you know, 35 pounds, something like that.
That's the hat you're wearing in your profile photo of you in front of the Twin Towers, right?
No, actually, that was another Kirby Morgan. That was a Kirby Morgan 17K. That oh no, wait a second. You know what? Yeah, across the street. That was the hat I was wearing.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah, it was across.
Yeah, I had it on my knee. Right.
Right.
Yeah. No, that was the hat. And I actually, well, in my diving career, I had 3 of these things, but they were great working hats. But it's certainly one of the reasons why I'm half deaf now.
Can I pop another couple more questions in while you're right here?
Sure.
One question is, what made you change the configurations that you were diving well on just this one wreck? And also, someone's noted that you run your airline for your reg underneath your right armpit. What was the reason for doing that? Is that not over your shoulder?
The two good questions. One, you know, we were diving hard hat or doubles, or I think a couple of times we even dove singles. I don't really have a single rig, but you know, I mean, we were working for ourselves. We were doing like, you know, if we felt there was an advantage, if we were working a bigger dredge, we'd go with helmets and umbilicals. But if we were working on Concepcion, we were working with scuba because we had to take a boat inside the reef, and we were just diving out of like a Zodiac. So it was, you know, our reasoning was, you know, what do you feel like doing? Right. And you know, it's for a lot of salvage work where you spend a long time in the water. It's fun being in hard hat. and we were all about having fun. So, I will run. I will sometimes run my regulator underneath my arm just to keep it like protected. Normally, if I'm diving shipwrecks here in South Florida, if I'm teaching a class, I've got my primary regulator that comes over the top of my shoulder, my right shoulder, and that's the only hose that comes over that shoulder. Everything, my secondary will come up from underneath, but and leave that protected. So I am. It makes it easier for me to locate this. It makes it easier for me to locate this. And if I'm going through a restriction, it's you know, I want everything I want to be very tight and hydrodynamic, and I don't want a bunch of hoses all running all over the place.
Right.
So we were down there. We were working on all kinds of different. We had, I would say, we were working on maybe 20 different wrecks down there. But the pirate wreck was the big deal. The pirate wreck was the one that they really wanted to find. So we're, you know, it's Joseph Bannister. It's like, okay, how this is a French map of Samana, and you know, it's not easy to see, but here it says Calle Bannister. You know, Bannister Island, and then at one point it was called Pirate Island. So where do you think the pirates were? Well, they got to be around Pirate Island, right? You know, where do you think Joseph Bannister careened his ship? And you know, when Phipps came in here with his salvage ship, Phipps came in here a couple of months after Bannister's ship was sunk. And what happened with Bannister is the governor of Jamaica said, I want him, go get him. So he sent out 2 Navy frigates. And the Navy frigates, they were used to hunting down pirates. It's like they'd show up and they'd say, we're the Royal Navy, so, you know, surrender, and then we're going to decide who we're going to hang. So when Phipps came in here, Phipps came in and wrote in his ship's log. And the reason we know about Phipps' log is because Phipps left Samana. He came in here to just kind of like check things out and see what's going on, speak to the locals. But what he wanted was Concepcion, the ship where we found the ruby. So it's like he comes in here, and in his log he said, "Oh, we came in and we found the wreck of the pirate Bannister." He's writing this in his log. And he's like, we found the wreck of the pirate Bannister. We don't want these local people to know we're divers. So we're just telling them we're merchants. But if we can't find Concepcion, we're going to come back here and try and dive the pirate wreck and see what we can come up with. But we can look down into the water in 4 brazos of water. We can look down and we can see the pirates' firelocks laying on the deck of the vessel exactly where they dropped them. So it's like, wow, you know, I mean, he's looking through the water. He's looking down onto the deck in 24 feet of water, 4 brazos. And he can see the muskets, the firelocks that the pirates left there. So it's very specific. So we come along and we're like, Calle Bannister, Pirate Island. Okay, so where is a guy? And this is, you know, everybody and their brother in the Dominican Republic has been looking around here, looking around here, looking around here. Why haven't they found it? Well, we didn't know it at the time, but the Royal Navy, the Royal Navy came in and they engaged Bannister, the Falcon and the Drake. And they engaged Bannister, and much to their surprise, the pirates fought back. So they're like, oh, so they you know, they tie up, they you know, they're shooting back and forth. The pirates have 2 shore batteries that they're using, plus there's small arms fire. The battle rages for 2 days. Finally, the British Navy runs out of shot and powder, so they have to retreat. First and only time that pirates defeated the Royal Navy. So it's like, okay, they leave, the pirates, then their ship is lost. Their ship, as the Royal Navy is leaving, the pirate ship, the Golden Fleece, explodes and bursts into flame. Now they've got another small sloop, but the Royal Navy leaves, they go back to Jamaica, and the governor goes ballistic. The governor is like, you got to go get this guy. So it's like, okay, he reprimanded both captains of the 2 ships, and it's like, you got to go find Bannister. The pirates, on the other hand, are like, hey, we beat the Royal Navy. Uh-oh, now what do we do? So they're trying to get out of there. Well, the Royal Navy chases, they go back there. They can't find the pirates. But from the sunken ship, they salvage all the ordnance. They salvage all the cannons. Why? Well, because cannons are valuable. And you know, it's like, oh, we don't want somebody else having cannons. We like having the cannon. So, which of course makes the ship harder to locate, because now we're not looking for big magnetometer targets like cannons. We're trying to rely on smaller Ferris targets. And Bannister, they chase down Bannister. They find him on the Mosquito Coast on an island by himself. They bring him back to Jamaica, and he's hanging from the yardarm when the Navy ships come into Port Royal. So it is the end of the pirate Bannister.
What year was this?
This is 1897.
Really?
So,
that late?
I'm sorry. 1687. I was being dyslexic. So the thing is, it's like, you know, okay, here's Bannister. This guy's a brilliant tactician. You know, I mean, he beat the Royal Navy, and they find this guy, and they come back and they hang him. And it's like, I'm not necessarily convinced that they got the guy. But, you know, anyway, there's so many different facets of this history. Why did this guy become a pirate in the first place? Well, it's like, he looked at his world. And what was his world? It was, you know, what were the Europeans doing in the colonial period in the New World? You know, and you've got, you know, the only true democracies were pirate ships. Pirates voted the captain into power, and they voted the captain out of power. Captain had to deliver for his crew, or he was replaced. Pirates, if a pirate was killed in battle, he still got a share. And his share was delivered to whomever he wanted it to be it his family or the other men or whatever. If you lost an arm or a leg, you got an extra share for, a missing appendage. And politically speaking, pirates were free men. They were the only democracy of the day. Is that the thing that motivated Bannister? I got no idea, but it seems like he was not in trouble with anybody. It wasn't that he had to become a pirate, but he really was very good at what he was doing. So here's Pirate Island. This is Bannister Island. By the way, the Spanish were here, the French were here. When the French were here, this is why the island of Hispaniola, half of it is Haiti and the other half is the Dominican Republic. The French came and the people of Hispaniola hated the French. Well, they drove them back, and the French essentially retreated to what is Haiti. They still celebrate their Independence Day from France, which I think was like 1845 or something like that. And you can see now, Pirate Island. Oh, they got a they got a hotel, here, a resort. There's awesome beaches. There's houses, there's all kind of stuff here. But generally speaking, it's a very low-lying island. So we go out and we start surveying around Pirate Island, but I don't like Pirate Island. Why don't I like Pirate Island? It's a stupid place to careen a ship. The more I learn about Bannister, the smarter I think this guy is. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the least stupid place to? You're out here, a ship coming around the point here. But the only place you can hide is on the backside of the island here. Now, the backside of the island doesn't have. There's no place you can bring a ship in.
What would have been the draft of his ship that he had to get over those reefs and around the?
Well, they basically want to get the ship. They want to tie it to a tree. They want to pull the ship in on high tide, get it as high up as they can. So when the tide drops out, there's as much of the hull exposed so they can clean it easier. So it's like, but they want to get up high. But where do you put the shore batteries? He's going to the trouble of putting 2 shore batteries. There's no place to put shore batteries. Now, if I look back over here to the north, there's a bunch of places that are better suited than Pirate Island. Well, it's like, okay. I never liked Pirate Island. We're looking there. We're looking. What are we finding? We're finding old stuff. We're finding, it was a French anchorage after the Bannister's ship was lost, but we can't find. Now there are a couple of guys who said, "Oh, I found the Golden Fleece," but I didn't have a camera with me, and this is a picture of the island from where I found the wreck. There were at least a couple of guys that claimed to find the wreck. No artifacts, no nothing. I know where the wreck is. None of this stuff made any sense to me. We surveyed everywhere around there. What was the one hard, steadfast thing we knew? 4 brassos of water. That's what Willem Phipps said. He said it's in 4 brassos of water, 24 feet of water. Okay, well then we know where's 24 feet. Let's follow that. Nope, didn't pay off. I didn't like it. I hated this place. Everybody's like, oh, you got to go back, give it another look. You're not. Now, My friend John Matero is married to a Dominican woman. Her father is retired from the Dominican Navy. He was the head of the Dominican Navy. He was an admiral in the Navy. And this is his villa in Samana. So it's like, this is where we're living. This is where in the morning I would sit out here and I'd drink my coffee. And you can see on the right-hand side there, there's like a little bridge, and there's a little dock over here. And the whole every day, then we're going down and we're going out. We're going out. I'm in a villa up here, and here's Pirate Island, like 5 miles away. So here, and this is the little island. They call it Cayo Vigio, that we're looking at like every day. So I'm discussing my dislike for Pirate Island. And John Matera and I are having a conversation, and Howard, my friend Howard, is there with us, and we're like, I'm like, you would never careen a ship on Pirate Island. You would never do it. And Howard's like, well, what's careening? And so, at this very moment, there's a boat over here on the beach that Dominicans, it's a fishing boat, and they're careening the boat because they had to do a hull repair. And I said, it's just what they're doing. They're trying to get the boat up, and they bring it up on the high tide, they tie it off to a tree, they pull it in. And Howard's like, oh, yeah, oh, okay. And I'm like, why wouldn't they use this spot? This is a far more defensible spot. Here's where you could put the shore batteries. You could bring the ship in here. It'd be much harder to see for Navy ships coming in here. And we say, okay, you know what? Let's look here. Now it seems silly because over here to the right is the whole city of Samana. I mean, it's a Dominican town full of people, and here we got what? This is like downtown. This is what the beach looked like. Anyway, we do a survey, and this is where we find the wreck. And actually, to tell you the truth, you see where this stick is here? That's where the wreck starts, and it goes kind of down to like 24 feet of water. So and over here is where we were living. But to figure out if we're like, okay, if it's this wreck, before we did our survey, it's like John Matera says, I'm going to go over and take a look around over there. And he takes a metal detector, and he goes up into this area of the island with a metal detector. What does he start finding? Cannonballs. He starts finding cannonballs, and he finds some of them with the English broadhead marked on them. Now, mind you, these are cannonballs that have never been in salt water. These are cannonballs sitting in the dirt up on the island, so they're still in pretty good shape. These are the English cannonballs from the battle. So we get out there, we start to put it together, and now we get to the point where we've actually got, we come across some more research, and this is from Jamaica, from a guy who wrote a journal, And he included this drawing. And here's the Falcon and the Drake. Here's the Golden Fleece. Here's this saddle-shaped island. This is the La Chamoux, which was their other ship that they escaped on. And here's Hog Island. And then over here is, you know, the backside. But if you, you know, here's Bannister's Island, and it's this saddle shape to this island. And right about here is where we ended up finding the wreck. So, you know, I mean, your original question was like, you know, I mean, I love figuring this stuff out. When you start to figure it out, and then all of a sudden, all the pieces come together. The ship's in 24 feet of water. When we actually get on the wreck, here we are having dinner. See where the boat is? That's where we were doing the salvage work. So we're looking over here 5 miles away, and the whole time the wreck was right in front of us. So it's like, how stupid is that?
How brilliant is that?
Well, you know, and here when we finally get on the rock pile, you know, here's the ballast stones, right? We're looking at this thing, and it's like, okay, we definitely got a wreck, but we did a magnetometer survey over this, and we got some very small hits. Now we know the cannons were picked up by the Royal Navy, but it's like, we got hits from these bars. These are the barrels of the firelocks, literally laying on top of the ballast stone, which they were laying on top of the deck as Phipps saw them. And these are the things that we actually picked up with our magnetometer survey. And then, you know, when we excavated the wreck, we got all kind of different, you know, this is the hull underneath the ballast stone. And, you know, on the sides of the hull, we actually had burnt wood, you know, and we've got this stuff. We've got lots of cool artifacts, musket balls. This was interesting. It was a bowl with porridge that had like petrified in the bowl. So this was a bowl of porridge one of the men had left, and it just sat there in the bowl for, you know, 300 years. And then, of course, lots of beads and stuff like that. So they had lots of interesting stuff on the wreck. This was not a big treasure wreck. This is what it would have looked like. You know, that style of ship. You know, it's, you know, you look back and you think like, oh, you know, how brilliant we were to find it, you know, and it's like how stupid we were to have been looking at this thing for several years.
Did you ever explain the discrepancy though of K.O. Bannister and then finding it in that far away?
It's one of those things that happens historically. You know, it is the people who, the first reference to that being Caille Bannister was the French. And so when the French came, you know, they told them about the big battle. And it's like, but you know, it's you know, generations have passed. And it's just things don't always translate well. So, and you know, this area was not, the inhabitants of this area were really in Michis. I'm on the other side of now it's called Cayo Levantado. They call it Cayo Levantado, which is you know, careening island, you know, levitating island, and it's you know, it's like, nope, nobody wants to careen a ship there. It's a terrible place for careening a ship.
Right.
But anyway, one of the other things we were working on there is a Spanish wreck, from 1551, and there's some unbelievable history, and we're really looking hard. It's called the San Miguel, but we're looking very, very hard trying to find the San Miguel. And you know, it's one of these things where you know, we're starting to understand it, but it takes time. This ring here, you know, the big bull ring on the end of that, the anchor, has still got sisal line, hemp line on it as chafing gear. But this is an anchor from that ship, and you can see how big it is, and stylistically, it's very much an anchor from the mid 16th century, 1500s, but completely buried in very fine sand, which is the wooden stock here is got some coral incrustation on it, but mostly it is you know, I mean, it's still wood. It's not in very good shape because it's got teredo worms and stuff like that. But you know, that for an iron artifact like that to bring it to the surface would destroy it. So the thing is, we dug it out, we photographed it, we took all the measurements, looked at it from an archaeological standpoint, and left it where it is, buried it, filled in the hole.
Right.
But this is in an area very close to a freshwater source, which means there's not a lot of salt in the water. But it's also, this sand is incredibly fine. It is what we call sugar sand. And it acts as such an awesome preservative for this. So we believe we know the track of the San Miguel. We know a lot of the history, because at the time, the Spanish, the San Miguel was owned by one of Cortez's men. Cortez was fighting the Aztecs in Mesoamerica, and he's given it hell, but it didn't happen overnight. Literally, the Pizarros went down and in, like, you know, 30 hours conquered the Inca. Cortez in Mesoamerica was struggling, and he had the paperwork from the king. The king said, conquer Mesoamerica, and you know, you get a cut of the action. So Cortez shows up. Cortez doesn't, you know, get along well with the governor in Havana, and Cortez is trying to get things going. He's underfunded. So the governor is like, I don't see why this guy doesn't, this guy's not going to get the job done. You know what? I want to be the guy to conquer Mesoamerica. So he goes back to the king and says, this guy's no good. I don't like Cortez. He's not doing the right thing. He doesn't have the money he needs. And he's give me the job. The king goes, okay. Cortez is fired. You take it. So he goes back home and he's like, they can't find Cortez. Cortez is running from him. So Cortez is now over in Mesoamerica. He's got a boat and he's like trying to make headway. So they're gonna go after him. So they send a boat. Cortez, they show up and they say, we're here to arrest you. He's like, oh, no, that's not gonna be happening. So here's your choices. We kill you or you join us. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll join you. So they lose that boat. So the governor in Havana is like, sends another ship. Now Cortez is like, now I got enough guys. So he takes these guys, offers them the same deal. But some of them are like, you know, this doesn't seem to be working out. I think I want to go home. So the ship that just showed up, Cortez burns it and goes, okay, well, now you got no choice. Now you got to stay. You got to stay and you got to fight. So one of the guys that came to arrest Cortez becomes not only his good friend, but a personal confidant. And he actually is a valuable fighter, but he's also a guy who understands politics. So Cortez says to him, listen, we need somebody that can be my voice for the king. I want you to leave here, go back to the king, and just make it so that when we're successful here, we don't all get executed. So this guy goes back and basically pleads Cortez's case. Cortez conquers the Aztecs, but becomes famous, becomes wealthy, becomes what the equivalent of a billionaire. Who was the guy next to Cortez? Who was the guy with the second largest cut? Was the guy that he sent back to Spain. And that guy, after Cortez is dead, that guy's living in Spain. But now, who's coming over from Spain? They're a bunch of entitled elitist royals. They're people who are politically connected, but they're not the conquistadors of old. The conquistadors were guys who owned nothing but their horse and their weapons. And they came to the New World and they're like, I am going to make something out of this. So this guy keeps getting in trouble with the king. And he's there like 30 years. And finally the king's like, oh my God, this guy's such a pain in the ass. Because all these guys are going back to Spain saying, oh, I wanted to do this and they were mean to me, and whining and bitching to the king. So the king says, I've had enough. I'm recalling this guy. So this guy is like, I'm being recalled. I'm here for decades. I fought with Cortez and I'm being recalled. So it takes him like 2 years to pull together all of his stuff, liquidate his access, and buy a fleet of ships to take his possessions back to Spain. One of those ships is the San Miguel. Who's the captain? Cortez's nephew is the captain. He's got it's all family and connections and all that. The San Miguel the fleet gets caught in a storm. The San Miguel gets caught in a storm, goes over the Silver Bank, goes over the reef, gets busted up pretty badly. They lose the rudder, and it heads towards Hispaniola. And then when it actually arrives in Hispaniola, 5 people lost their lives when they went across the reef, but nobody dies in the sinking. So the ship sinks, they get everybody ashore, and they start thinking, they send out people to go tell the government, we're alive. We need to be saved. Who's the first guy the government sends? The accountant. The accountant is going to, well, how much, where's all the money? So they salvage the wreck to a certain degree. But there's a lot that they don't get. And how do we know that? We know that because people who were passengers on the ship petitioned the king. And they petitioned the king, and they were like, well, I was on the ship and some of the stuff came up, but I didn't get anything back. And, I'm really poor. And, in those petitions, they tell the story of the sinking. So we know pretty much what happened. And literally, that's how we found this anchor. That's how we think we have found the wreck itself. But we were working in the Dominican Republic on a contract, a salvage contract, a commercial salvage contract, and the government took a shift. They said, you know what, we got too many gringos working here. We're just not going to renew their contracts. And it wasn't just the commercial salvage industry. It also, they were doing gold mining and it was other stuff. They wanted to become more self-sufficient. Economically, that their economy is not booming, and certainly with coronavirus now, it's even worse. But we believe that we're going to get a chance to go back in there, and we believe we already know where this wreck is. But there's other wrecks we'd like to work down there as well. And I know that I like gold, I like silver, I like precious stones, all that stuff. What are we going to find on a known wreck from 1551? I don't know, but I can't wait. I can't wait to find out.
Let me pop a couple questions at you.
Go for it.
What's the weight? Did you get a chance to weigh that anchor and measure it? How big is that thing?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think it was about 8 feet long. If I'm looking like from here to here, I think it was about 8 foot. Because these were, 1551, these were not real big ships. These were before the big galleons. These were what they called naus. So it would have been a smaller ship. But we believe they threw this anchor here to lighten the vessel to get as close to land as they possibly could. This is, relatively speaking, close to land, but there's nothing tied off to it.
Right.
So
you said the ship lost its rudder on the reef. It was,
yeah. They had a makeshift rudder that they were using to steer with, and trying to steer using the sails and that kind of thing. They just wanted to get to land. You're talking about people in 1551. These were Spaniards, Europeans, who, these people didn't know how to swim. If they were dumped into the ocean, that was That was probably going to be it. They had a longboat that was still serviceable after they went over the reef. And when the ship stopped, that's how they got to shore.
And that anchor is all you found, and it's not positively identified as the part of the
No,
cement. It is
no,
just consistent.
absolutely not. It is well, but the anchor is not all we found. We also have we also believe we found the wreck, but literally, we've seen like this much of the wreck. It's we've got a magnetometer survey, and we have seen iron objects that seem to be of that period.
To back up and ask the magnetometer question, you said that your magnetometer was picking up the barrels lying on the bottom. The barrel,
the firelock barrels, the barrel of the gun.
Right.
In other words, what we found was the barrels, the mechanical workings of the trigger mechanism, and in some cases the brass butt plate. But I think on one of them we found some of the wood. But we also found some swords. We found like a big broadaxe. It was like tools of the pirate trade. Some coins, but it was not like a treasure chest of coins. Onion bottles, a lot of cool artifacts. Literally, we came up with thousands of artifacts.
Really? Someone's asked, can you talk a little bit more about what it was like when you located the battle positions on the island that solidified your theory of that you were at the right place, the battle location? Could you find those shore emplacement cannons, or?
We're not, no, because the pirates took the cannons and basically pushed them off the cliff. When the British came, they picked up all of the cannons and took the cannons with them. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, we're not sure exactly where their emplacement was. We know roughly where it is. We think it was right up on the top up here.
Yeah.
And the ship, the wreck is like, I guess, right about here, kind of tucked in where the island kind of cuts in there to make it harder to see. And you can see that the ship is kind of pulled in there. And here's Hog Island, and I don't have a picture. Hog Island is like another island right over here. But at one point, in the 1970s or something, this bridge runs to another resort over here, and they had a restaurant up here. So there is some construction that's going on there between the 1600s and when we found this thing.
Okay. Someone has asked, that was Bowden that wanted to search out there?
Yeah, Bowden was keen on finding this. He was like, find this, I want to 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 find this. I was reluctant. Let me say, I wasn't excited about it, but at the same time, I was like, I'm sure we can find it. I'm sure we can find it. So when we're looking around Pirate Island and we can't find it, now it becomes personal. Now I'm getting frustrated. Now I'm like, I believed we could find it on the basis of our skill with the magnetometer. And all we had to do was run the magnetometer over the right place. And you know, I mean, this went on, you know, like a long time. You know, this was like, you know, more than a year.
Those were very small targets, though, to pick up with a magnetometer, weren't they? My experience is you really want a big iron hull or some iron
But
cannons.
to tell you the truth, you know, anchors and cannons are great. You know, if you've got something that is a very a polar, what you get is on the magnetometer is you get a dipolar wave where you get a strong positive and then you get a strong negative. Uh, um, so you know that ideally is what you're looking for. And cannons, so long as they're ferrous, so long as they're iron, then they're not bronze or you know composite. So long as they're ferrous, they're awesome. Anchors are awesome as well. But the thing is, you will pick up on a ship of a colonial era ship, you'll pick up, you will get a lot of, it's not so much positive and negative, but you'll get a lot of positives and negatives. You know, if you look at a chain with a magnetometer, the chain, you know, where one link is in with the next link, so it's the positive end of this link is by the negative end of this link, and they basically cancel each other out. But in the chaos of a shipwreck, you'll even get a magnetometer readings, because the magnetometer is a passive tool. It's just reading the background, you know, magnetic deflection of the natural magnetism of the area.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the ballast stones are actually what will give you magnetic signatures. So sometimes you pick up a bunch of stuff, nails, spikes, you know, garbage. We found paint cans, you know. But in the case of this, we really saw the gun barrels, and again, it's because the gun barrels were so perfectly polar. You know, you've got a big piece of steel, one end's negative, one end's positive.
Did you investigate whether there could have been a gun emplacement on the main island where you were staying right there?
You know, we thought about that, but you know, when we read John Taylor's account of the sinking, he basically said that you know, it was it was between the English ships here, the Falcon and the Drake here, and the pirates over here. So we never, this distance here was greater than this distance here. So we never really found any you know shot from the pirates like over here or anything like that. So this drawing, John Taylor said he was there, but we suspect that he was not at the actual battle. But he spoke of the battle as though he were there, mm-hmm. and probably the map was drawn by somebody else.
All you guys watching, I would ask that if you haven't done it already, you go to Google Earth, Google Maps, and look at this place today. It really shows why that was the perfect place to careen that ship, because it is.
You know what? It's one, and like I said, you know, like we, you know, finding the wreck. Look how smart we are. But the fact that we were looking at the wreck for you know, literally for years, drinking coffee, looking at the wreck for a couple of years. It's like, oh my God. But you know, I mean, that's the way it is with shipwrecks. You know, the is if I'm looking at this, if I was gonna, you know, if I was gonna go backwards in time and start this over, I'd want to have the John Taylor manuscript drawing. We didn't have that until we'd already been diving on the wreck, and the question was, we have a wreck. We're diving it. We have a wreck right there. What wreck is it? And you know, it's like, okay, well, how do we identify? And just so you know, there's another wreck here, there's another wreck over here, and then there's another wreck down here. Now, and those were, one was you know, a 19th century wreck, another one was a little small wreck. How much of those wrecks was left? Well, not much. And there's another wreck over here that was a Dutch ship that we believe was a prize taken by these guys, and that wreck has yielded all kinds of stuff that is sitting in the laboratory at Cultura, you know, undergoing conservation. The big sugar jars, they look like you know, the clay amphorae. A couple hundred of those. But you know, it certainly, when we're looking at a drawing like this, you know, it is, you know, in commercial diving we have a saying: don't do anything in the water that you can do topside. So it's like, you know, before you jump in the water, if you can, you know, is this the right place? You know, if we had this drawing, it wouldn't have been 2 years. You know, even if we were being, you know, very slow and simple, we would have figured it out. Mainly because of Hog Island. Hog Island is now called Pigeon Island. But it's like, still, you know, it's you know, I mean, when you look at the geology, it's just it's pretty tough to miss. It's a very distinctive look to it. And you know, also, you know, when you look at it from a tactical point, it's like, okay, well, we can put the gun batteries up here, and you know, when the Royal Navy has to come in here and leave there. It took them, because you know, they're sailing ships. It took them 2 days to navigate out to get around the island.
It's a pretty tough little inlet or cove there, whatever you want to call
Yeah,
it.
to get out here, it took them 2 days. The Royal Navy, and then when they got back to Jamaica, they were of course, you know, because they let the pirates beat them. And but you know, when you look at that, it's like, tactically speaking, that's a brilliant location. It's why they, you know, Bannister was also a guy who was able to motivate his crew to stand and fight in the face of the Royal Navy, which was not something which was common at that point. You know, so this is a brilliant guy, and when the Royal Navy comes back with Bannister hanging from the yardarm, it's like, oh, we found him alone. He was on an island. This is definitely the guy.
Chip wants to know why he was alone on that island.
Well, the story was that his crew had abandoned him on the island. In other words, they sailed away in La Chamoux, and so his crew had taken him to the Mosquito Coast and dumped him there. And then the Royal Navy is fortunate enough to stumble upon him. But is that what happened? I don't know.
We've been going for an hour and a half. Can you switch gears a little bit and talk about some other things before you
Sure,
have to go?
sure. When this wreck, the Golden Fleece, what were the barriers in figuring this thing out? Well, the barriers were mental barriers. You got to look at things differently. You also have to say, you know what? Knowledge is power with all this stuff. Years ago, I was looking for a wreck in New Jersey. It was the SS Carolina. And it's like, okay, well, who wasn't looking for it? But nobody was finding it. It was way offshore, off of the South Jersey coast. But guys literally were out looking for it. Why weren't they being successful? Well, I didn't know that. That there were actually for real numbers posted by NOAA in their AWOI system. Here's where the Carolina is. They weren't. They're historical numbers, and so when okay, I want to find this wreck. How do you do it? Okay, well, the first thing I want to do is I want to know everything about the wreck. I want to know everything about the history of the wreck. I want to know about the ship, the history of the ship, how the ship was constructed, all of that. And I started compiling as much information as I possibly could. I wanted to know more about the Carolina than anyone on Earth. I went to the usual places. And the problem with the Carolina was there wasn't much readily available information. So it's like, I'd go to the a museum and say, what do you guys have? And they'd say, oh, nothing. A bunch of them had the same photograph. There was like one photograph of the wreck. So I'd say, okay, if you're dealing with archivists, they don't necessarily know what you want. So you have to convey that to them. It's up to you to mine the information out of them. And so it's like, okay, well, I never talked to an archivist where I didn't ask, okay, well, if you were me, where would you look for information? This taps into their professional knowledge. And it also, most of those guys, they want to help you. So, I started acquiring information. Step one, go to the Lloyd's of London register. What were the previous names of the ship that I'm looking for? Okay, well, what's the history? What happened? Let me find. Are there any photographs? Where was it built? Oh, is the builder still in business? Oh, Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock. Oh, they are still in business. Well, let me call them up. Yeah, how can we direct your call? How about the public relations? Okay, hang on. I get directed to public relations. I explain myself to the public relations guy. My name is John Chatterton. I'm looking for a shipwreck. It was a ship that was hull number 15 when you guys built it in 1896. It came back a second time for a refit in 1915. And I could tell the guy was like, yeah, whatever. Well, let me direct your call to our archivist. They have an archive, of course. That's great. Yeah. The archivist gets on the phone, and it is Marge Simpson's sister from The Simpsons. Like, hello.
Always wondered what she did for a job.
Oh my God. So I explained the situation to her, and to which she responds, that was a long time ago. And I'm like, yes, it was. And she's like, I don't think we have anything left on that. I said, well, could you check for me? And she takes all my information. She's like, I'll call you in 2 weeks. I was like, okay, didn't hear from her. I got to call her back. She blew me off so effectively that she didn't even remember any of the stuff that I spoke to her about the first time. So I got to start from the beginning again. I go through the whole thing, and I'm asking, can I come down there? Can I come down there and look around the archive? No, we're a defense contractor. We build ships for the United States Navy right now, and you're not allowed here. I'm like, okay, so this goes on like 4 or 5 months, and I'm like, I know there's stuff there, but she's not on my team. Clearly, she's angry. She's not happy, and she's really not happy with me because now I'm starting to bother her. So I send her a dozen yellow roses with like a nice note, nothing like romantic because I but it's like, here's hoping you can help me, blah, 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 blah. Next thing I know, she's calling me. And who's on the phone? It sounds like a giddy 16-year-old girl. She goes in and pulls out, I think, I can't remember the exact number, but it was about 25 photographs and a bunch of other archival material that I got. It's the only time I've ever worked with an archive where they never charged me for the archival materials. But now, for me as a guy looking for the Carolina, I am in possession of photographs that nobody else has. I am in possession of photographs of it being rehabilitated. When it was originally built as a twin screw, and it came back in and it became a single screw. So I've got all of this stuff, and so it's like so I'm acquiring information. I'm acquiring what is valuable. Let's see. Do you have this? Are you looking at the picture now or no?
We can see you because you have to go back and reshare whatever you've pulled up there.
Yeah. Great.
Can you do that, or do I have to make you the host?
Oh yeah. You have to make me the host again. Apparently.
You are the host, so you should be able to share now.
Okay. So I want to share that. Okay.
There it is. Yep.
Okay. So this is a painting. I mean, it's a famous painting, but it's a painting, and that's like basically what everybody had. So then I start looking at well, actually, here I'm looking at this photo here. In the history of the ship, before it was the Carolina, it was La Grande Duchess for the plant line. Well, I'm looking around, I'm talking to people, and it's like, I'm talking to this one archivist at the South Street Seaport in New York City. They're like, no, we got nothing on that. Uh-oh. So I'm talking to the archivist, they got nothing for me. But I said, okay, so listen, if you were me, where would you go? And the guy, he goes, up by Central Park, there's a little tiny museum. It's not a maritime museum. It's a photography museum. He says, but they might have something. They took a lot of shipwreck photos. So I talked to them, and so they have a whole bunch of pictures of La Grande Duchess. And like, you know, okay, well, here's the binnacle, you know, here's the lifeboat davits. This is how the deck was laid out there. There's that same binnacle on the upper deck here, mast up forward. It's like, okay, well, I'm doing good. Oh, I got something that's, you know, here I got something like deck plans now. I'm starting to really acquire a bunch of information. So, I go to, and here's the Carolina coming in for the refit. You see how the name it, the Carolina, New York, and you can see there's a couple of letters missing. So the name Carolina is not painted on there. Those are bolted on letters. And I say bolted on because you can even, if you zoom in on that, you know, you can see little like bolt holes. And if we look, here's another one. So the name is up on the bow. So I already know, here, this is when they're flooding the dry dock here. All the work is complete. So now I can actually look on here. I can see where the individual little bolts are holding the letters on. So I know quite a bit about the Carolina. I know quite a bit about the construction. I'm looking at the history. So I need to know the history. Well, it was sunk on the same day as 5 other ships. So it's 6 ships sunk by a German U-boat at the beginning of World War I. It's the U-151. So I start looking around. I'm pulling stuff up. I've got the specifications, the book of specifications. I got a book written in Spanish about the sinking. I've got a U.S. Navy intelligence report, interviews with the survivors of not just the Carolina, but of the other 5 ships that were sunk there. So the German U-boat is sent to the United States as part of a U-boat flotilla. The Kaiser's trying to make a point. The United States just entered into the war. If you look the dinosaurs right in the eye, they run away.
Good to know.
So you know, I'm trying to crack the code. Where I know about the wreck, where is it going to be? So I'm trying to get the history down. What is the history? Naval Intelligence interviewed all the survivors. The Carolina is traveling along at 7 o'clock at night. Most of the people are in eating dinner. All of a sudden, the U-151 fires a shot across the bow. Now, the U-151 has already sank 5 boats this day. 5 ships, 5 merchant ships, 2 big steel vessels, and 4 wooden sailing vessels engaged in the coastal coal trade. So it's like, okay, they've already had a good day. Now, the Carolina is the biggest ship yet. It's about 400 foot long. So it's like, okay, the German U-boat sinks, stops the Carolina, tells everybody to get in the lifeboats. They abandon ship, they get in 10 lifeboats. And the Germans sink the Carolina. They fire a torpedo, but it doesn't work. So they put explosive charges over the side and sank it that way. And the German U-boat gets away before anybody comes to help the passengers and crew. So the passengers and crew take to the 10 lifeboats. Within the 10 lifeboats, one of them is motorized. The rest have like sails and oars. It's 7 o'clock at night when the Germans first showed up. So now it's getting dark. They're in the lifeboats. That night and the next morning, all the boats are picked up, except for one. One of them stays out another day. And the people in the lifeboat were basically eating dinner. And they didn't stop and get their stuff. They didn't do anything. They went, got into the lifeboat, and the lifeboat made its way to the beach in Atlantic City in New Jersey. So they're, the people in the lifeboat are all wearing denim shirts. And the denim shirts were cargo that they pulled a crate of these denim shirts out, and they were wearing them as protection from the sun and that kind of thing. But the people on the beach told the story. They said it seemed like that lifeboat appeared out of nowhere. And it's like, you know, people knew immediately. Over the 2 days, people had heard about the German U-boats. Those must be the people from the German that were sunk by the German U-boat. Now the Shriners are having a convention in Atlantic City. The Shriners have their band on the beach there. The lifeboat is coming in. People are rushing out into the water. Women are fainting. The Shriners band is playing God Bless America. They're taking people out of the lifeboat. It is something detailed. It is something that today's press would have loved. Did I lose my thing?
No, I did that. Did you want that back up there? Sorry.
Yeah. Can I have that?
Sure. Sorry.
That's okay. So I've got all this history, and all these people are interviewed, and I start to understand exactly what happened. And now if you look at what Noah has, Noah put this stuff all over the place, So the U-boat couldn't have possibly sunk all 6 of these ships. So I'm thinking, I'm much better off trying to find 6 wrecks than 1 wreck. So then, as I'm reading through the German documents, why am I reading through the German documents? Because I know German documents. So I find the accounting of the I find the accounting of what happened. And let me see. And I get it in it's in German. I got to translate it and all that kind of stuff. But it is. I translate it. I read it, and I find out that the German U-boat captain actually made made a tracing of where he sunk the ships. So I go and I get the tracing, and if he used the proprietary German coordinate code, which was not latitude and longitude. So I had to translate some stuff and find a way to translate. But anyway, I make it all work. And I'm like, okay, now I have like a chart overlay, which is essentially the same chart overlay that the German U-boat captain made. So now I know about where the 6 wrecks went down, one relative to the other. I've got information. I've got pictures like this. I know if I get on the wreck, I can probably identify it. I know this wreck better than anybody. I understand the history. I've got pictures of the survivors. I've got pictures of the survivors.
You've got the sharing back, so you can.
Yeah, no, So I've got, you know, these are the crews, pictures of the crews. Pictures. These are the people from the Carolina wearing their denim shirts. They're at the hotel. They're barely off the beach. I know all this stuff. So what's the next step? How do I find it? Well, okay. How about who is going to know where these wrecks are? Fishing boat guys. Somebody's fishing this wreck. I've never been on a shipwreck where I haven't seen fishing line. Okay. So I go down to the docks and I'm saying, who in this general area, who's the top gun? Who's the high hook? Who's the guy everybody wants to be? Oh, it's Paul Regula on the bounty hunt. So I go track down Paul Regula. I explain myself and I say, you know, I'm looking for the wreck of the Carolina. He goes, I know where the Carolina is. I said, you do? How do you know? He says, because it's a big metal wreck. I got a big metal wreck out there. And I'm pretty sure that's it. How do you know it's a big metal wreck? He says, because sometimes my customers, an anemone gets tangled up on their hook. They pull it up. And when I take the anemone off of the hook, before I throw it in the water, I turn it over and I look at the bottom. If it's all rusty, I know it came from a metal wreck. If it's got pieces of wood on it, I know it came from a wood wreck. So this is a big metal wreck. I said, okay, well, 2 other wrecks that day, the Winnicon and the Texel were both big metal hulls. How do you know it's not one of them? He said, that's a very good question. Why don't we take I have a chart overlay that I made from the U-boat captain. You've got all the wrecks you're fishing in there. Why don't we take my overlay and put it over your chart and let's see what's what. See if anything lines up. We line up 5 out of the 6 wrecks. And the Carolina is actually, the wreck he thought was the Carolina was actually the Texel, another one of those wrecks there. So we went out. And then the guy's like, okay, when do you want to go? Now I got a guy who he wants to work with me. So I'm like, okay, you know, this is the way to do this. And you know, went out, landed on the wreck. On the first dive, I see the stern all covered with nets, but I'm looking at the stern and I'm like, I've seen this. I've seen photographs of this stern. This is the Carolina. Came up, looked at my photographs, went back in the water, 240 feet of water, cut the nets away, found the name, popped off the sea from Carolina, and brought it to the surface. And like, that's it. We found the wreck. It's the Carolina. And then the next dive trip, I was out on the wreck, and I was running late on my way back to the anchor line, and I swim across an opening in the deck, and I look down and I see a large metal box with little short stubby legs and a dial on the side. I said, that looks like a safe, but I'm running a little late. So I went and did what I had to do, but you know, it was like the last dive of the season, And I'm like, I said, okay, you know what? I'm gonna salvage that. I'm legally gonna salvage that safe. I got an attorney who would work essentially for cost. And we went to the federal courthouse in Trenton, where I got legal salvage rights to the wreck. And we had to fill out a bunch of paperwork. I had to bring the C to prove my ability to salvage. And sitting on the bench waiting to see the judge. And unbeknownst to us, they have like a batter up system, which of course we understood that part, but it's like throughout the court system, Judge Joseph Rodriguez was the first Hispanic federal court judge in the state of New Jersey. And he was known throughout the court system for telling his family's story, how when he was giving the oath of citizenship to immigrants who were becoming naturalized Americans, he would tell the story of his father, how his father came from Cuba, and he was traveling on a ship that was attacked by a German U-boat in World War I, and the ship was sunk, and his father spent 2 days in a lifeboat, eventually coming in to the beach in Atlantic City, and how he first set foot on American soil, climbing out of a lifeboat onto the beach in Atlantic City. The judge's father had been on the Carolina. And of course, that's what wreck diving is really about. It's human connections. It's the judge's family sharing their history and at the same time finding out more about themselves by the wreck and stuff. And when we went into court, the judge was like, my brothers and I always felt our father was like, he was telling these stories and all this kind of stuff, but what's the truth? And so, I got to really tell the judge the history, the detailed history. And it was very emotional. And eventually I had to meet the judge's whole family and all that kind of stuff. But if can you bring me back to, let me use...
You are the host. You should be able to share whatever you want.
Oh, okay. Let me see. I think I should be able to share what I want. I think that seems fair, doesn't it?
Yes.
So when I brought up the safe, these are a set of earrings, $1 gold pieces. They were made earrings back before 1918, and a $2.50 cufflink made from gold U.S. coins. Those are the earrings.
They haven't popped up yet.
I'm sorry?
You haven't shared them yet. We can
and see, I'm like not doing it right, am I?
Here it comes.
Okay, you got this coin?
Yes.
Okay. And these are the earrings and the cufflink. Gold coins, $20 gold pieces, $10 gold pieces, $5 gold pieces. This one's 1907. Some of them were 1800s. This is a Tiffany's platinum setting diamond ring with 23 diamonds in it. It was still actually in the Tiffany's box. This is a white gold with 21 diamonds in it. Diamond and sapphire. set in gold. That this is like a diamond and sapphire. You can see the pressure from the sinking. You can see how it crushed this this gold bracelet with sapphires in it. There was a bunch of sapphires in this stuff. This is a gold bead necklace, all very delicate construction, but there's no string through it. It's one bead is connected to the next bead, and very interesting. Another gold necklace with little stars on it. This was interesting. These are Spanish escudos that were made into jewelry. In other words, they had little links that were soldered onto them, and there was a brass key and a brass padlock. So, you know, it was some kind of charm or something, but, you know, maybe for a child, got no idea. Cross, again, this is another one where the pressure just crushed this. And there were initials on the back, some watches. This is a little sapphire and diamond locket that again was kind of crushed by the pressure. Gold bracelet, a gold pendant of some sort, or watches. This is a gold rosary. All the beads are gold, the cross is gold, everything's gold. That's you already saw that diamond ring. Oh yeah, this was kind of nice. This is like a diamond and sapphire pendant. I assume it went with the diamond and sapphire ring. It was similar design. More $20 gold pieces, $10 gold pieces, $5 gold pieces, just size wise. This was the Tiffany's box that the ring was in. The box didn't hold up well. And this was a wedding band that had initials and a date in it. I sent this to a genealogist, and there's, you can see 1902, but they were not able to do anything with it. But you know, the only reason that I was successful on any of that stuff was because I kind of looked at things a little bit differently. And you know, I mean, that's what wreck diving should all be about. It's less about the nuts and bolts of get in the water and kick this way and you know, do this and do that and carry a strobe and you know, use a line. And it's much more about being prepared, knowing what you're doing, and being willing to learn and adjust to situations to in order to make yourself successful. Preparation is really the key to all this stuff. It's you know, not that that's not the key to real life too, but you know, I mean, it is. There is no reason why you should do anything in the water that you could do topside. You've got all the time in the world topside, even before coronavirus. So we've got all the time in the world. When you get in the water, you want to make the very best use of the time. If you're looking for a wreck, you don't want to jump in the water where the wreck isn't. You want to jump in the water where the wreck is. Just swimming around the Atlantic Ocean, swimming around the Caribbean Sea is not going to work. You're just not going to be successful that way. You want to rely on hard work and ingenuity and creativity, not silly stuff like luck.
Cool, John. You've been going for 2 hours. That's awesome.
Well, listen, you know, I want to, you know, thank you guys for this opportunity. Somehow, some way, we made Zoom work.
Yeah.
I wasn't actually attacked by any dinosaurs during the making of this presentation.
It actually came close. I don't know if you saw it, but it came close a couple times. Anybody have any final questions? I think we asked all of the questions that you, oh, Oak Island. Any thoughts on Oak Island? You going back there? Do they need you back there? Was that productive? What was your experience on Oak Island?
I loved Oak Island. I loved those guys. I thought those guys were awesome. I remember reading about Oak Island when I was a kid. And I read about Oak Island out of books that smelled old when I was a kid. And it's like, you know, it is such a fascinating mystery. And for me, having the opportunity to go up there, to be there, to work with those guys know, they're so knowledgeable. What's there? I got no idea. But I'll tell you what, the treasure that those guys take away is, those guys are family. They share a passion. They benefit from everything they do up there. And you know, we talked about me going back up there this year, that there's something that they wanted me to take a look at. And you know, I'm not sure how coronavirus is going to change all that. Right. They're doing the same thing up in Nova Scotia that you know, we're doing down here. So I'm not sure how the summer's going to shake out, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'm definitely not done up there, and I don't, regardless of whether those guys keep doing a TV show or not. I mean, at some point, I think they're probably going to get tired of it, but you know, they enjoy doing what they're doing up there, and what a fascinating mystery. Awesome. And I, you know, they don't call me in to go dive in the mud, but you know, I like being the guy that gets called when you know, when they're struggling with something. Right. I like the challenge.
When there's something cool going on. Listen, everyone is saying thank you very much. Can you see the chat, John, beside the screen? Do you have that?
No. I might be able to. I'm sure it's because oh wait, yeah, here. Hang on. Right. Well, okay, there we are.
If it's all right with you, I'm going to unmute everyone so that they can say thank you and goodbye. Thanks, John, for doing this. It was awesome. Believe me,
it was my pleasure, guys. And you can find me on my website's johnchatterton.com, and you guys are welcome to go on there, shoot me an email if you got further questions or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we'll follow up with you. Someone has said that shadow divers was the reason they started diving, and it wasn't the reason I started, but I bet that goes for a lot of us, that book and your experiences as described there were really important to all of us. So,
you know, I love Rob Kurson. I spoke to him earlier today. We're very good friends. I talk to him all the time. You know, how fortunate am I to have a guy that's that talented that I've been able to work with.
Right. So. All right, everyone unmuted so they can say, I think.
Thank you, John, for everything.
There you go. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Well, guys, done. It was my pleasure.
It was a great way to pass the evening.
Yeah. Oh, good. Now I think you got a couple more to work out. Just take them one night at a time. Awesome. And Ted, I'm loving your cat.
Thank you. She was very interested in everything you did.
You guys have a great evening.